There is a moment, right before a marriage breaks, when nobody involved can see it coming. Not the husband, still convinced he is fighting the right battle. Not the wife, who has already started looking for comfort in a place she never expected to find it. And not the two other people standing just outside the frame, unaware that their own hearts are about to be pulled into a fire that was never supposed to touch them. Somewhere in Los Angeles right now, a woman who has spent years protecting her family is sitting across from a man who is not her husband, and neither of them is entirely sure why the silence between them suddenly feels dangerous. What happens when the person who is supposed to save your marriage becomes the reason it falls apart? And what happens when the person meant to comfort you becomes the one thing you can never take back? Welcome to Buzz Delight. I'm Adam, and if you have not subscribed yet, now is the moment, because what we are about to unpack is one of the most emotionally explosive collisions this show has quietly been building for months, and you do not want to miss a second of where it goes. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell, and drop a like before we go any further, because once this story starts unfolding, there will be no clean place to pause. The two people at the center of this storm are Steffy Forrester and Carter Walton. On paper, they should never have ended up here. Steffy is a Forrester, a woman who has weathered scandal, loss, and heartbreak with a kind of hardened grace that has made her one of the most resilient figures in this entire universe. She is married to Finn, a man she has fought for, forgiven, and rebuilt her life around more times than anyone should have to. Carter, meanwhile, has spent years as the steady one, the reasonable one, the man who somehow always ends up holding everyone else's secrets while quietly falling apart behind his own composed exterior. He has just watched his relationship with Daphne collapse into confusion and hurt, leaving him exactly the kind of emotionally unmoored that makes a person dangerous to be alone with. Two broken people, two people who are not supposed to need each other. And that, more than anything, is what makes this so terrifying to watch unfold. Because this is not a story about two people falling in love. This is a story about what happens when loneliness finds its own gravity, when two people who are already drowning reach for the nearest thing that will not let them sink. And right now, in Los Angeles, that nearest thing might be each other. To understand how Steffy got here, you have to understand what Sheila Carter has done to her marriage. It is not one single betrayal. It is not one dramatic night that broke everything. It is the slow, grinding erosion of trust that comes from loving a man whose birth mother refuses to disappear, no matter how many times she is supposed to be gone for good. Finn keeps telling Steffy that she is his priority. He keeps promising that nothing matters more than protecting their family. And on some level, Steffy believes him. But belief and security are not the same thing. And after everything Sheila has put this family through, Steffy no longer knows how to feel safe just because someone tells her she should. Every time she thinks the nightmare is finally over, something new pulls Finn back into his birth mother's orbit, and every single time it happens, a small piece of Steffy quietly starts to give up on the idea that this will ever truly end. That is the psychological wound sitting underneath everything Steffy does right now. It is not that she doubts Finn's love. It is that she has learned, painfully, that love is not always enough to keep a person from feeling utterly alone inside their own marriage. And loneliness, when it goes unspoken for long enough, does not just sit quietly in the background. It starts looking for an exit. Think about everything Steffy has survived just to get to this point. She has rebuilt her life more times than most people could endure without breaking entirely. She has forgiven, rationalized, and absorbed one crisis after another, always telling herself that the next chapter would finally be the peaceful one. Every single time, something has pulled that piece out from under her. And there is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes from constantly bracing for the next disaster, a fatigue that has nothing to do with physical tiredness and everything to do with the slow erosion of hope. Steffy is not simply tired of Sheila. She is tired of having to be resilient. She is tired of being the strong one in every single version of her own story. And when a person reaches that particular kind of exhaustion, they do not always make their best decisions. They make the decisions that feel, in the moment, like relief. That is the psychological trapdoor this storyline is quietly building underneath her. Not villainy, not calculation. Just the very human, very dangerous math of a woman who has been strong for so long that she has forgotten what it feels like to simply be understood. Carter's wound is different, but no less devastating. His relationship with Daphne represented something he had not let himself hope for in a long time, a version of happiness that felt earned rather than accidental. And then, almost without warning, it started slipping through his fingers. Carter is a man who has built his entire identity around being dependable, around being the person other people trust to stay calm when everything else is chaos. But underneath that composure is someone who is exhausted from constantly being the strong one, someone who has quietly absorbed everyone else's pain for years without ever fully processing his own. When his relationship with Daphne began to fracture, it did not just hurt him. It cracked something open, something he had spent a long time keeping sealed shut. And Carter's exhaustion runs on a parallel track, even if it looks different from the outside. For years, Carter has been the man everyone turns to when their own lives fall apart. He has counseled, mediated, and steadied nearly everyone in this world at some point, often at the expense of his own emotional needs. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes from always being the person other people lean on, because it teaches you, slowly and quietly, that your own pain is supposed to come second. When his relationship with Daphne began to unravel, it did not just cost him a partner. It cost him the one place in his life where he was allowed to be the one who needed comfort instead of the one providing it. That loss cuts deeper than most people around him realize, because Carter has spent so long performing stability that almost no one thinks to check whether he is actually okay. So here you have two people, both wounded, both frustrated, both feeling abandoned by the people they love most, and now they are turning toward each other. At first, it looks completely innocent. It looks like exactly what it should be. Two friends talking, two people who understand pain, sharing the weight of it with someone who will not judge them for feeling broken. Steffy can say things to Carter that she cannot bring herself to say to Finn, not because Finn would not listen, but because saying them to Finn would mean admitting just how close to the edge she really is. And Carter can finally let his guard down with someone who is not expecting him to have all the answers. But emotions are unpredictable creatures, especially when loneliness, alcohol, anger, and disappointment are all sitting in the same room. One moment, two people can simply be comforting each other, offering the kind of honesty that friendship allows. The next moment, everything can change, and neither person may fully understand how they got there until it is already too late to stop. Picture it, Steffy finally breaking down after months of holding everything together, and Carter pulling her close, not out of desire, but out of instinct, the simple human need to comfort someone who is hurting. Picture Carter admitting, maybe for the first time out loud, that he no longer has any idea what his future looks like, that the plans he built his hope around have quietly dissolved. Steffy understands that feeling in a way almost no one else in his life can, because she has spent years rebuilding a future that kept threatening to collapse around her. In that moment of mutual recognition, the connection between them stops feeling like friendship and starts feeling like something else entirely, something deeper, more personal, and far more dangerous than either of them intended to let it become. And if a kiss happens in that moment, that is the point of no return. That is the single second neither of them will be able to take back, no matter how many times they replay it in their minds afterward, no matter how badly they wish they could rewind the tape. For Steffy, one impulsive mistake could unravel everything she has spent years fighting to protect. Her marriage, her family's trust, the fragile stability she has clawed back from every previous disaster. For Carter, crossing that line could permanently alter his relationship not just with Daphne, but with Steffy, with Finn, and with an entire circle of people who have relied on him to be the steady presence in the room. The real question hanging over this entire storyline is not just whether something happens between them. It is whether this emotional connection burns out quietly before it goes too far, or whether one shocking night detonates consequences that rip across every corner of Los Angeles. There is also a quieter, more uncomfortable layer to this entire situation, one that rarely gets discussed openly, but sits underneath almost every storyline like this. Steffy and Carter are not strangers. They exist inside the same tightly woven circle, sharing history, shared friends, shared professional space, shared years of watching each other navigate crisis after crisis. That familiarity is precisely what makes this so much more combustible than an affair with someone from outside the family's orbit would be. There is no learning curve. There is no getting to know you phase where walls stay naturally intact. Carter already knows Steffi's patterns, her defenses, the particular way she goes quiet when she is protecting herself from feeling too much. And Steffy already knows exactly how to read Carter's silences, the ones he uses to hide just how much he is struggling. When two people already understand each other that intimately, the walls that are supposed to keep friendship from becoming something else are thinner than either of them wants to admit. Because remember, Finn is already fighting to save his marriage. He believes, as far as he knows, that he and Steffy are working through this together, that the cracks caused by Sheila are something they are healing as a team. Daphne, meanwhile, is already sitting with her own complicated grief over what happened between her and Carter, unaware that the man she is still processing feelings for might be finding comfort in someone else entirely. Neither Finn nor Daphne is prepared for what could be happening right in front of them. And that unpreparedness is exactly what makes this storyline so combustible. Steffy and Carter may only be looking for comfort right now, but in this world, comfort has a long, dangerous history of transforming into scandal. If Steffy and Carter believe they can simply walk away after one emotional conversation, one shared moment of vulnerability, they may be fooling themselves in a way that will cost them everything. Because once a boundary begins to dissolve, once two people cross from friendship into something more intimate, it becomes almost impossible to put that boundary back exactly where it was. The real danger does not begin the moment they touch, or the moment they kiss. It begins the instant both of them quietly realize, somewhere deep down, that they are no longer thinking of each other as just friends. Steffy has spent years fighting for her family, for her marriage, for the version of her life she has worked so hard to build. But the relentless pressure surrounding Sheila has once again pushed her toward a breaking point she never wanted to reach. Every time she allows herself to believe the nightmare might finally be behind her, something new drags Finn back into the shadow of his birth mother's chaos. And even if Finn is doing everything he believes is right, even if his intentions are pure, Steffy may find herself sinking into something far more painful than anger. She may find herself feeling completely, unbearably alone. That is precisely the moment when Carter could become the person she never expected to need. Carter understands what it feels like to watch a relationship slip away while feeling powerless to stop it. He knows the particular ache of loving someone and still losing them anyway. When Steffy finally opens up to him, when she lets her guard down in a way she has not allowed herself to with Finn in months, Carter may be seeing a side of her that almost no one else gets access to. A woman who is exhausted from constantly having to appear strong for everyone around her. That kind of emotional honesty has a way of closing distance fast. Maybe Carter reaches for Steffy's hand, not thinking about what it means, just responding to the moment. Maybe Steffy does not pull away, because for the first time in a long time, someone is simply sitting with her pain instead of trying to fix it. Maybe the silence stretching between them suddenly carries more weight than anything either of them could put into words. And then comes the moment that could change absolutely everything. One look held a beat too long, one step closer than either intended to take, one impulsive decision neither of them fully processes until it is already happening. A kiss between Steffy and Carter would not simply be another scandal added to a long list of soap opera betrayals. It would be a detonation capable of destroying multiple relationships simultaneously. Finn would be devastated, and not only because his wife crossed a line he never imagined she would cross, but because of who crossed it with her. Carter is not some stranger, not some outside threat Finn was ever trained to watch for. He is part of their world, someone Finn trusted, someone he never once considered a danger to his marriage. That betrayal would not just wound Finn romantically, it would shatter his sense of who he can trust at all. But would Steffy immediately regret what happened? Would guilt hit her the instant it was over, sending her running back to the safety of denial? Or could she discover something far more unsettling, that being with Carter, even briefly, made her feel something she has been quietly missing for months, something she is terrified to admit even to herself? That possibility is where this story becomes genuinely explosive, because it is no longer just about a mistake. It becomes about the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the wrong choice can still feel, in the moment, disturbingly right. Steffy may try to convince herself that it was simply the alcohol, the exhaustion, the emotional pain talking. Carter may promise both to himself and to her that it will never happen again. But secrets rarely stay buried for long in a world like this one, and if either Finn or Daphne discovers the truth, The fallout could be absolutely brutal. Imagine Finn walking into a room and immediately sensing that something has shifted. Steffy cannot quite meet his eyes. Carter suddenly seems uncomfortable in a way he never used to be around Finn. The tension in the air is subtle at first, but Finn knows his wife too well not to notice when something is wrong. He starts asking questions neither of them is prepared to answer. Meanwhile, Daphne may have her own instincts pulling her toward the truth. She does not need concrete proof to sense that something has changed in Carter, that he is suddenly distracted, distant, carrying a weight he refuses to explain. And once suspicion enters a story like this, it rarely stays contained. It spreads, it multiplies, and it eventually forces a confrontation nobody involved is ready for. Because the real question driving this storyline may no longer be whether Steffy and Carter crossed the line. The real question may become how far they went before they even realized they had just created the single most dangerous secret of their lives. And there is something else worth sitting with here, something that makes this storyline feel especially unforgiving. Steffy has spent years positioning herself as the person who fights for family above everything else. She has judged others in this world for choices that fractured marriages, for moments of weakness that destroyed trust. If she becomes the one crossing that exact line, the hypocrisy alone could haunt her almost as much as the betrayal itself. It would not simply be about hurting Finn, it would be about confronting the uncomfortable truth that she is not immune to the very mistakes she once condemned. That kind of self-reckoning tends to hit harder than any external consequence, because there is no one left to blame except the person staring back in the mirror. The situation grows even more explosive if Steffy and Carter decide the safest path forward is silence. At first, that choice might feel almost reasonable to them. Why destroy two already fragile relationships over a single emotional mistake made in a moment of weakness? Why hand Finn a wound he may never fully recover from? Why hurt Daphne, who is already carrying enough pain of her own? But secrets in this world do not stay quiet. They grow heavier with every day that passes, pressing harder against the people trying to keep them buried. And the longer Steffy and Carter hide what happened, the more suspicious the people around them are likely to become. Finn may already sense that something in his marriage has shifted, even if he cannot name exactly what it is. Steffy could grow distant without meaning to, avoiding certain conversations, tensing up whenever Carter's name comes up unexpectedly. Finn knows his wife better than almost anyone. He knows the particular quality of her silence when something is bothering her. But this time, whatever is bothering her may be far worse than anything he is prepared to imagine. Picture the moment Finn finally asks her directly, "Did something happen?" 4 words, delivered with the kind of quiet intensity that comes from a man who already suspects the answer will hurt him. For a single, unbearable second, Steffy freezes. She does not answer right away. And that 1 second of hesitation may tell Finn more than any confession ever could. Even if Steffy manages to deny it in the moment, even if she finds the words to deflect his suspicion, Carter may not be able to hide his own guilt nearly as well. Every time he looks at Finn, he may be pulled back to the memory of the night that changed everything between them. Every time he is in the same room as Steffy, the tension crackling underneath the surface may become almost impossible to disguise. And then there is Daphne, whose instincts may be sharper than either Steffy or Carter is prepared for. If she notices Carter behaving strangely, distracted in conversations, avoiding eye contact, carrying himself like someone hiding something heavy, she may begin quietly connecting pieces she was never supposed to see. Carter suddenly seems distant. Steffy suddenly seems to be avoiding him in public settings where they would normally interact freely. Neither of them can offer a clean explanation for why being in the same room together has become so uncomfortable. That is when suspicion could escalate into something closer to a full investigation. Daphne may confront Carter directly, demanding to know exactly what he is hiding from her. Carter, believing that silence is the only way to prevent even more damage, may refuse to give her a straight answer. But that refusal is almost guaranteed to backfire. The more Carter deflects, the more convinced Daphne may become that something devastating is being kept from her, and the harder she may push to uncover it. There is something particularly painful about the position Daphne could find herself in here. She is already processing her own heartbreak over what went wrong between her and Carter, already trying to make sense of a relationship that slipped away before she fully understood why. Discovering that Carter may have turned to someone else in the immediate aftermath would not simply confirm that the relationship is over. It would rewrite the entire narrative of what she believed was happening while she was still grieving it. Suddenly, her heartbreak would not just be about losing Carter, it would be about realizing she may have been grieving a version of events that was never fully true, that somewhere in the middle of her own pain, Carter may have already moved towards someone else's arms for comfort. Few things sting more than discovering the timeline of a betrayal was closer than you ever imagined. Meanwhile, Steffy could find herself caught between two conflicting emotions: guilt over what she has done and a simmering anger she cannot quite justify, but also cannot shake. Part of her may want to place blame on Finn for allowing Sheila to remain such a corrosive presence in their lives for so long, for failing to fully protect the security she desperately needed. But another part of her, the more honest part, may recognize that nothing Finn did actually forced her to cross the line she crossed. If she and Carter did something that cannot be undone, Steffy will eventually have to confront the painful truth that the consequences belong entirely to her, regardless of how much pain led her there. There is also Ridge to consider, a man who has spent decades watching the people he loves most navigate scandal after scandal, often at the center of the very storms threatening to destroy this family's stability. If word ever reaches him that his daughter may have crossed a line with Carter, a man Ridge has trusted professionally and personally for years, the fallout would not stay contained to just Steffy and Finn. It would ripple through Forrester Creations itself, through boardroom dynamics, through every relationship Ridge has spent years carefully balancing. Ridge has never been a man who processes his children's pain quietly. He tends to feel it as though it were his own, and a betrayal this personal, involving someone this close to the family's inner circle, could push him toward confrontations that reshape far more than just Steffy's marriage. But what happens if the secret is exposed before Steffy ever gets the chance to come forward on her own terms? That scenario could turn this entire storyline into an absolute catastrophe. Finn could feel betrayed by two people he trusted deeply, his wife and a man he considered an ally. Daphne could be forced to realize that while she was quietly working through her own heartbreak, Carter was seeking comfort in someone else's arms entirely. The wider Forrester family could be pulled into the fallout as well, with Ridge potentially forced to confront the devastating possibility that his daughter made a mistake capable of destroying her marriage. And Carter, the man who has spent so long being everyone else's steady presence, may suddenly find himself losing nearly everything he has carefully built. But the biggest twist in this entire storyline may still be waiting in the wings. Because if Steffy begins noticing changes in her body in the weeks that follow this encounter, an entirely new and far more terrifying possibility could emerge. A pregnancy test, a positive result, and if the timing of that pregnancy creates any uncertainty at all about paternity, then this emotional lapse in judgment could transform from a private secret into a scandal that no one, not Steffy, not Carter, not Finn, and certainly not Daphne, will be able to control. One secret kiss has the power to fracture trust beyond repair. But one shocking pregnancy twist has the power to reshape every single life connected to this story, permanently. As the tension surrounding this entire situation reaches its breaking point, Steffy and Carter may come to a devastating realization. The greatest danger they face is no longer what happened between them in that unguarded moment. The greatest danger is everything that comes after. Once emotions like this are set loose, there is rarely a clean, easy path back to how things used to be. They could try avoiding each other entirely. They could convince themselves over and over that it was simply a mistake born out of pain and circumstance. They could bury the memory as deep as they can manage and pretend, on the surface, that nothing has changed. But every secret leaves behind some kind of trace, some subtle fracture in the way people behave around each other, and Finn may be the very first person to notice it. Imagine Finn finally reaching the point where he can no longer accept Steffy's explanations at face value. He knows, on some fundamental level, that something is wrong. Her behavior has shifted in ways he cannot quite articulate but absolutely feels. Carter has been acting strangely around him, quieter than usual, unable to hold eye contact the way he normally would. The tension becomes impossible to ignore, no matter how hard everyone tries to pretend otherwise. Finn may begin asking the kind of pointed questions that Steffy never imagined she would be forced to answer. And then comes the nightmare scenario neither Steffy nor Carter has prepared for. Finn discovers the truth. Whether it arrives through a moment of confession, a suspicious message accidentally seen, or someone else entirely revealing what happened, the fallout could be devastating beyond anything Steffy anticipated. Finn has spent so much energy fighting to prove that his family comes first, that Steffy and their marriage matter more to him than anything else in his life. From where he stands, the revelation might feel like the ultimate betrayal, discovering that while he was desperately trying to hold their marriage together, Steffy was finding comfort somewhere else entirely. And Carter. Carter could instantly become the one person Finn never wants to look at again. But Steffy is unlikely to accept all the blame quietly. She may push back, accusing Finn of failing to recognize just how deeply the endless Sheila situation has affected her emotionally. She may insist, with real conviction, that she felt alone, unheard, and abandoned inside her own marriage for far too long. And Finn, wounded and furious, may fire back with a single devastating question that cuts straight to the heart of the betrayal. So Carter was the answer. That single line, delivered in the heat of a shattering confrontation, could become one of the most explosive, emotionally raw moments this storyline produces. Meanwhile, Daphne is unlikely to stay silent either. If Carter crossed an emotional or physical line with Steffy, Daphne may feel completely and utterly betrayed, forced to reevaluate everything she believed about their relationship and about him. What began as two wounded people quietly reaching for comfort could ultimately leave 4 separate lives shattered in the process, none of them able to fully return to who they were before. And then there is the possibility that could make everything infinitely worse. What if Steffy discovers she is pregnant? Right now, that remains purely speculative, a dramatic possibility rather than a confirmed direction for the story. But if the show ever does take this arc there, the consequences would be seismic. A pregnancy could tear open every existing wound in this family, especially if the timing surrounding it creates genuine uncertainty about who the father actually is. Finn would demand answers he may not be emotionally prepared to hear. Carter would be forced to confront a level of panic he has never faced before. And Steffy could find herself standing at the center of a scandal larger and more consuming than anything she has previously survived, in a story already defined by scandal after scandal. There is also the question of what this would mean for Carter's standing beyond his personal relationships. He has spent years building a reputation as someone people can rely on, someone whose judgment is trusted in rooms where trust is not handed out easily. A scandal this personal, involving a married woman inside a family he is professionally intertwined with, would not stay confined to whispered gossip. It could follow him into every room he walks into afterward, coloring the way colleagues, friends, and even casual acquaintances perceive him. Reputations built over years can unravel in a matter of days once a secret like this becomes public, and Carter, more than almost anyone else in this story, understands exactly how unforgiving that kind of judgment can be, because he has watched it happen to other people before. Now he may be forced to sit inside that same unforgiving spotlight himself. But even without a pregnancy entering the picture, one emotional mistake carries the power to permanently alter everything for everyone involved. Finn and Steffy's marriage may never fully recover from a betrayal this personal, this close to home. Carter could lose Daphne entirely, along with the trust of nearly everyone who once relied on him to be the calm, dependable presence in the room. And Steffy may come to a painful realization far too late that the comfort she so desperately needed during her darkest moment came with a price far steeper than she was ever prepared to pay. There is a version of this story where Steffy and Carter manage to catch themselves just in time, where one of them finds the strength to step back before the moment becomes something neither can undo. Maybe Steffy hears Finn's voice in her head at exactly the right second. Maybe Carter remembers what Daphne meant to him before everything fell apart, and that memory is enough to pull him back from the edge. If that happens, this storyline could still leave behind real damage, an emotional affair that never physically crosses the final line but still reshapes how Steffy and Finn see each other, still leaves Carter and Daphne wondering whether trust can ever be fully rebuilt after coming this close to disaster. Sometimes the almost is enough to change everything, even without the point of no return actually being reached. But there is also a version where restraint simply is not enough, where two people who have spent months quietly starving for understanding finally give in to it completely, and the consequences detonate exactly as devastatingly as this story has been building toward. Which version actually plays out may depend on nothing more dramatic than timing, on whether someone walks into a room a few seconds too early or too late, on whether one of them finally says the thing they have both been too afraid to say out loud. That is what makes this storyline so unbearably tense to watch unfold. The line between comfort and catastrophe here is not measured in weeks or months. It may be measured in a single, unguarded moment. So will Steffy and Carter truly cross the line that neither of them can walk back, or will they somehow manage to stop themselves in the final seconds before disaster becomes permanent? That is the question now driving one of the most quietly devastating storylines in Los Angeles. For now, the emotional connection between them remains the confirmed development, while an actual physical betrayal, and certainly a pregnancy, remain firmly in the realm of speculation rather than confirmed fact. But if one impulsive moment of comfort quietly transforms into one carefully guarded secret, this storyline could be building toward one of the most explosive scandals this show has produced in years. 2 marriages hang in the balance. 4 lives are teetering on the edge of a truth none of them are ready to face. And somewhere in Los Angeles, right now, Steffy Forrester and Carter Walton are about to discover that the most dangerous thing 2 lonely people can do is mistake comfort for something safe. Because it never stays safe for long. Not in this world. Not for people who have already spent years learning exactly how quickly a single quiet moment can rewrite the rest of their lives. What makes this particular storyline so difficult to look away from is that there are no clear villains anywhere inside it. Steffy is not a woman scheming to destroy her marriage. Carter is not a man plotting to steal someone else's wife. They are simply 2 exhausted, grieving people who found a moment of understanding in exactly the wrong place, at exactly the wrong time, and now have to live with whatever comes next. That is what real heartbreak tends to look like. It rarely announces itself with obvious warning signs. It creeps in through loneliness, through exhaustion, through the quiet, human need to feel understood by someone, anyone, even when reaching for that understanding comes with a price neither of them fully calculated in the moment. If this story has you holding your breath, make sure you are subscribed to Buzz Delight, because the moment this secret starts to surface, we will be here breaking down every single devastating detail with you. I'm Adam, and this is far from over. Whatever happens next in Los Angeles, one truth is already impossible to deny. When 2 broken people stop treating each other as friends and start treating each other as the only safe place left to land, the fallout rarely stays quiet for long.